Welcome to Panels and Borders. I'm Dominic. So I found this article last week. I was going to make a video. I was actually going to make this video last week, but decided to save it for this week. And it's an article by Scott Mendelson over on Forbes. And it's all about what Dune must do at the box office to avoid John Carter syndrome. So in the article, he talks about what the movie has to do to succeed at the box office. So I'm not going to go through it. It's a long article. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I'm going to talk about some of the more interesting points he makes in this article. Because Scott Mendelson has been kind of doubtful on this movie. So let's get started here. Box office. Dune must avoid John Carter syndrome. Vanity Fair has kicked off the long lead marketing campaign for Denis Villeneuve's adaptation of Frank Herbert's Dune, the classic sci-fi novel, which spawned a series of books and a few attempts at filmed adaptations, notably David Lynch's infamous 1984 flop, which earned $31 million on a $40 million budget, is beloved by fans and mostly respected by those who couldn't get into it. Sorry Dad, I really tried. As a groundbreaking piece of fantasy literature, the books inspired, explicitly or implicitly, copious sci-fi classics. The movie, part 1 of 2, still slated for December 18, 2020, must avoid being seen as a pretender to the throne, glorified knockoff of the films its source material inspired. It must avoid the fates that befell the likes of John Carter and the Bicentennial Man. So I don't think Dune's going to be looked at as a knockoff, because there's been it wouldn't be viewed as any more of a knockoff than any other science fiction movie, in my opinion, that comes out, because there's been so many things that have been influenced by Star Wars, and there's been so many different sci-fi movies that almost like everything kind of seems derivative now. Everything seems like a copy of something else to a certain degree, so I don't think this is going to be judged any more harshly than anything else, as far as that goes. Now, as for the John Carter thing, now Bicentennial Man, I have never seen that movie. I know it's a Robin Williams movie, but I don't know much about it, so I'm not going to talk about that. But John Carter, I'm going to talk about that. I can remember when this was in theaters, and I remember Disney did next to nothing for the marketing of this movie. Unless you were really into John Carter and it just said the Warlord of Mars, like, you really wouldn't even know what the movie was about. Even the posters were bland, and the title was kind of bland. John Carter, that's it. Why wouldn't you call the movie The Warlord of Mars, or John Carter, Warlord of Mars, or The Princess of Mars, or under anything more catchy than John Carter? That's it. And it seemed like it was in the theaters. It just came and went really fast. And the weird thing about it is I actually wanted to see this movie. My brother saw the movie and said it was really good, so I wanted to see it. So I remember it was really weird, because it seemed like for a few years there, Disney buried this movie for whatever reason. Came and went in the theaters, and then I tried to rent it. Couldn't rent it at any video stores. And then pretty much after that, the video stores all died out anyway. So then waited for it to come on Netflix. It never did. And then I tried buying the DVD. I scoured all the Walmarts everywhere. I could never find it on DVD for quite a few years. And I never actually seen the movie till probably up to about a little over 2 years ago. I rented it on YouTube and was finally able to watch it, and actually really liked that movie. I thought it was a pretty solid science fiction movie. But I think the reason why that movie really died is it just seemed like Disney didn't push any marketing for that movie at all. While I remain concerned that Dune will be a redo of Villeneuve's Blade Runner 2049, critically acclaimed adaptation continuation of a cult property that fails to recoup a huge budget due to the disinterest among general moviegoers, Dune at least has a star-studded cast, the rough outlines of a conventional hero's journey / fantasy adventure, and a much better release date. Moving Dune to December 18th, 2020 is the film's best chance of actually breaking out, since it is now positioned as the year's big Christmas / New Year's fantasy tentpole along the lines of Avatar, Fellowship of the Ring, Force Awakens, and Aquaman. And it goes on to list a few others. Says he does have a point. They can position this as the big year-end fantasy movie, fantasy sci-fi flick at the end of the year, so that is true. But one thing, he always compares to Blade Runner 2049. There's this weird thing. People are stuck on this Blade Runner 2049 thing. Like, they're convinced because Blade Runner 2049 flopped, Dune is going to follow suit. already way more people's talking about Dune on the internet than they ever did Blade Runner. Plus, it has a way better cast that's going to draw in a lot of people than Blade Runner ever did. Like, I don't know how much star power Ryan Gosling got, but compared to just Zendaya and Timothée Chalamet, I don't think he has a fan following like those two. They have a very strong fan following, both of them. And then you got all these people, younger people, who are going to get drawn into the movie because of the following they have on their Instagrams and all that. And then you got the shippers who are going to want to ship these two actors together. So you got that shipping thing. You know, I know that's, you know, like the younger generation's thing, not my thing, but it's true though. You're going to have those people in there. And which you didn't have any of that with Blade Runner 2049. And you had Harrison Ford come back in it, but he wasn't the main focus of the movie, and he didn't come in till towards the end of the movie into the story. And now this is just my opinion. This is my observation about Harrison Ford. Now I might be completely wrong. I might be all right about this. I mean, you can tell me otherwise in the comments section. But I think he's way past his prime for box office draw, Harrison Ford. I honestly believe that. And the only draw he has, because you can always see when an actor's gone past their prime, because they'll start going back and doing stuff they said they'd never go back and do. Like how I heard for years and years and years that Harrison Ford would not ever play Han Solo again. He would never do it again until he wasn't so popular anymore, and then Disney threw a big pile of money at him and came back and he played Han Solo. Well, I heard that for years. He absolutely said he always said he would play Indiana Jones again. He always said that, but he said he didn't like Han Solo. He felt he outgrew the character, and he had no interest in ever playing it again. And but he ended up coming back, and then he ended up coming back to do Blade Runner again. But like, if you combine him with Star Wars, like, he has a draw, but him on a movie on his own now, I don't think is a big draw like it used to be. I think he's gone past his like box office prime, like what he had back in the 80s and 90s. Like, his name alone would sell you on a movie. Now in this paragraph, he talks about the competition that Dune might have from Top Gun. While that release date remains unchanged, there are some new variables that threaten what was always a commercially dicey prospect. Paramount has moved Top Gun Maverick to December 23rd, 2020. Dune may not be the go-to year-end event movie that may lose IMAX screens 5 days after release. The Tom Cruise sequel was partially shot with an IMAX-certified digital camera. Top Gun Maverick, now opening at Christmas Eve, prevents what I eventually presumed would happen, namely Warner Brothers tossing Dune into 2021 in favor of one of its two bigger, more important coronavirus imperial tentpoles. But both Wonder Woman 1984, still slated for August 14th, and Tenet, still set for July 17th, also featured footage from IMAX cameras. So I doubt either picture wants to split the screens with Top Gun 2. So it's an interesting point. I don't know how many, like, I can't really speak on the IMAX thing. I don't know how many people go out their way to watch movies in IMAX. I know I don't, but I honestly, I don't know that. And Top Gun, yeah, it's competition, but in a way, but they're two completely different movies. I think if you're, you know what I mean, they're going to draw in different audiences. I mean, they're both like, because one's going to be more of an action movie, one's going to be more, well, one is like science fiction, fantasy, like high concept science fiction, stuff like that. So, I mean, and the other thing, like, you're never going to get a spot in the theater where there's zero competition. And, I mean, a lot of people might go see both movies. Like, I plan on going to see Top Gun Maverick. I want to see that movie too. But I'm definitely going to go see Dune as well. So those are two movies I want to see that month. So it's going to be hard. Unless they move it, it's going to be hard to avoid any competition. Now, my only worry would, if more movies keep getting pushed back to that December release date, then it's going to make it like crowded. And then on this paragraph, he goes on again to talk about how an older franchise or an older property that they're bringing it back again can run the risk of looking like a ripoff of the things it inspired. The danger in adapting an older / classic property with a long legacy of inspiring successful franchises is that it threatens to look like a ripoff of the properties that ripped it off. That is part of what stemmed the likes of Robin Williams' Bicentennial Man, John Carter, and Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. Selling yourself as the one that started it all only gets you so far, as it's just a fancier way of saying, hey, this is a new movie, kind of like those other movies you liked, only it's a bit removed. Hey, King Arthur is a superhero now. But there's nothing. They haven't been doing that though in the marketing campaign. I mean, with the exception of Denis Villeneuve saying that Dune was Star Wars for adults. I guess that's maybe where he's taking the link, but it's not really comparing itself or saying, hey, this is going to be like Star Wars, or hey, this, and there's a lot more buzz for this movie than there were any of the other movies he's listed. Bicentennial Man. Well, I can't talk about Bicentennial Man. I don't really remember. My memory is very vague on that movie, and I've never seen it. But same thing, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. I actually saw that movie. I didn't go see it in theaters, but I watched it, and it's actually pretty. I actually didn't mind that. It's a pretty good science fiction movie. And John Carter, like I said, had like no Disney did not push marketing on that at all. Now here's the difference, though. I think with these other movies. Now I don't know about Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, but I don't know how well known that property is. I don't know how much compared to Dune. I don't know how much of a fan base it had, but I know a little bit more about John Carter and Blade Runner and those things. Okay, like you had that 1984 film come out by David Lynch, and it bombed. It didn't do well. But over time, it developed its own cult following over the decades. So there is a fan base that is built up behind that movie that will probably go see this new one. Not only that, Dune has been slowly over decades cultivating a fan base. Probably a much bigger one that was there before the 84 film hit theaters. So you had the 84 film come out. Then in the 90s, you had some video games for the computers and stuff based on Dune that were really big hits. And a lot of people got into Dune through that. I know I had a nephew, he got into Dune through Dune 2000. He played Dune 3000, loved the game, then he read Dune the book. I got into Dune through the 84 film. And so all these things are bringing people into it. And then you had also, that started up in 99, the Brian Herbert, Kevin J. Anderson novels. Now I know they're a little bit controversial among Dune fans, but one thing can't be argued is they've sold a lot of those books, and they were popular. And they brought a lot of new readers into the Dune universe. There's probably a lot of people that got into Dune through those Brian Herbert books. So that in itself has been building up a huge fan base over the years. So all these things, and then you got the 2000 miniseries, and then you got the follow-up Children of Dune. Now people always kind of gloss over these two, like, oh, well, people forgot about that. Not Dune fans haven't forgot about those two miniseries. Dune fans still remember them. So then it just goes on saying, Warner Brothers has to sell Dune as worth seeing in a theater, even for folks who have no interest or knowledge in the IP's pop culture legacy. It has to sell on its own cinematic merits, regardless of whether it inspired the likes of Star Wars or Tremors. And then he goes on to talk about the strong cast and things like that. So there, he does have a point. Dune has to sell itself. It's got to be worth seeing for general movie goers, like people who are not diehard Dune fans and haven't read the book a bunch of time. It's got to catch those people. It's got to get those people in the seats. And I think with the casting they've done with all these big names, I think that's going to help with that. But he does have a point here in this, that it doesn't matter if it inspired Star Wars or not. People who are hardcore Star Wars fans and don't know anything about Dune are not really going to care about that. And then he just goes on to talk more about Blade Runner 2049 and how the marketing campaign and all that kind of stuff behind that. So that's pretty much the points I wanted to go over that he talks about in this article. So he does bring up a few good points, but still, again, he's comparing it to Dune 2049, which I remember I was excited for that movie, but I was one of the few. Nobody was talking about that movie on YouTube like they're talking about it now. And, say what you will about the casting of, the gender swap of Leah Kynes. One thing about it, it's getting people talking. Whether or not it's a negative thing or a positive thing for the movie, it is getting people talking about this movie. Twitter went nuts over that. You never saw that with Blade Runner 2049 because there was nothing controversial to talk about that movie. There wasn't really anything, because it was like a sequel. There was nothing it wasn't based on anything, so there was no characters that you could swap your genders around or anything like that because it was all original. but it already you can see that Dune has more of a buzz marketing-wise than the other thing. I think the biggest problem right now is see how long this current situation we're in, this pandemic, how long that stretches out. That's the biggest threat to it right now. And so we'll have to see how it goes going forward. But interesting article. He brings up some stuff I agree with him, but then I think people are still stuck on the Blade Runner 2049 thing, which I think already it's proven itself to have a much greater marketing buzz around it than Blade Runner 2049 ever did. So that's everything I got to say in this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section, and I will see you at the next one. Thank you to all of my subscribers, and thank you for watching this video. And if you're new to the channel, like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to hit the bell icon for notification when new videos are uploaded.